the betrayal from his own party, with some faction supporting former Vice President Atiku Abubakar and another supporting President Buhari, the Supreme Court finally confirms his candidacy. What happens now? I'm talking about Donald Duke, by the way. Joining me is Mr. Donald Duke to speak on this particular matter. Of course, I do have guests in the studio. We'll get to them. But I spoke with Mr. Donald Duke, and of course, this is what he had to say. All right, before we go to Donald Duke, yes, we have guests in the studio. Let me just introduce them. I have seated at the extreme, Dami Adebayo. He's a public affairs analyst. It's good to have you join us.
Hi,
it's been a while.
It has.
Of course, Ayo Ademiluyi, he's the NBA Lekki Forum Secretary. It's good to have you join us. All right, so I spoke with Donald Duke earlier on. We will bring that up. But first and foremost, elections are over. We're all waiting for Mr. President to put his cabinet together. That's not necessarily news that we need right now. Or what are we supposed to do with that news? I'll start with you, Dami.
I think for me, it's probably something that, you know, the newer parties should take on as well. And it's lessons that we should learn towards the next elections. The fact that this case has been decided as well probably needs to put a lot of introspection into the internal processes that political parties engage in, from, you know, the primary process to the party constitution as well. I'm glad that this has happened, and finally this might probably set some sort of precedent. I'm sure, you know, he'd probably be in a better place to explain that as well. But I think it's important right now that we know, and that the postmortem of the elections is carried out in this way, that we can see the things that went wrong as well. Because, I mean, no third party did halfway decently in the presidential elections as well. And reasons such as this, you know, should be interrogated as well. The strife, he wasn't the only one that had to fight with his own party as well. I mean, you have some other parties, you know, disowning their own candidates and endorsing either the incumbent or, you know, his main opposition as well. So these are things that, you know, Nigerians deserve answers to, and I think it's good that, you know, the court has stepped up and given this. A bit late, but it's good. All right, so
Ademiluyi, you are an attorney, so you know how court processes work. Yes, some things take a longer time. I mean, Professor Jerry Garner was saying that the outcome of the last judgment, where Donald Duke is claiming some amount of money, he's saying that the Supreme Court is not being fair to him. With the case that you have seen and followed, do you agree with Jerry Garner?
Well, my first thought is about the crisis that befalls our legal system in this part of the world. You know, the case in review itself is an offspring of the embedded crisis within the judiciary. You have a pre-election matter that ought to be decided before the election. And now, long way after we are already done with the elections, the Supreme Court judgment finally came in. It has been my regular position that we need to urgently review the state of the judiciary vis-a-vis the quantity and quality of its personnel, structures, and all of that. I've always argued for the possibility of a constitutional court. Because if you have a constitutional court separated from the mainstream courts, in which these matters can be expeditiously dealt with, we won't have a post-election victory, so to speak, for Mr. Donald Duke. In any event, Mr. Donald Duke will be able to reap his fruit of his labor in terms of the damages awarded to him by the virtue of that judgment.
But does that cover for the damages, other damages, more like if he were supposed to get some certain votes or campaign? I mean, he had no time to campaign.
That's exactly the consequential effect.
It was like it was over before it even started.
That's the consequential effect of the time lag between the delivery of the judgment, between the time we file the appeal at the Supreme Court and delivery of the judgment. I think we need to review our law books to set time limits for pre-election matters. I'm aware of more or less case laws that speaks to that, but now you can make it a more or less a statutory timeline within which pre-election matters ought to be had expeditiously up to the Supreme Court.
I hear us talk about this. Dami, I'm going to let you comment. I hear us talk about this all the time. I hear legal persons say, we need to do this and we need to do that, but we never get down to the doing, to pushing it. What is the NBA? I mean, you're the secretary of the NBA, Lekki, Forum. What are you guys doing in your little cocoon to push this kind of... Because we do this grandstanding when we are on the receiving end, but or people like you will say this is what should be done, but how do we get it done?
There's this popular proverb that Rome is not built in a day. Where the thing is that for some of us in the public advocacy space, we also have to give up in terms of pushing our positions and all that. If you look at this, for instance, there was this campaign about making the state judiciary independent. Just recently, the president inaugurated a committee to look into that. So it's all about making the biggest noise in the marketplace. There's a whole lot of crisis bedeviling the country in itself. But as we continue to push all these positions, and let me just add as to the issue of party structure and party administration in Nigeria. I think it's also a question of where you have the way we run parties in this part of the world, in terms of who are the members of each parties, what is the program of the parties, and how are the parties being run democratically. Those questions are very key.
But these parties all have constitutions, don't they?
To building healthy democracy. For instance, it will be another thing entirely where there is internal democratic structures that can resolve some of these internal disputes of parties, such that people who lose out in those elections, internal party primaries, who have to resort to prolonged litigation before resolving them.
All right, Dami.
I think it's really a political culture at work, really, looking at it. And it's easy to look at the SDP, and really, they should take a lot of the blame for this as well. Because if he did have any disputes, this man went into a primary with, with either the plaintiff or the person that he took to court as well, and he lost the primaries. You see, so his party members had decided that Donald Duke was in a better place to place him as well. So the issue should have come before that. Was he competent, or was he, legally allowed to run for it? And then too, as well, this zoning issue is probably time that we lay to rest. It's 2019 as well. I think.
Well, we think if we're doing away with zoning, then we're doing away with federal character. But
really, ironically, those are two different things as well.
Because you see, whether we like it or not, the politician might tie zoning to the federal character, saying, you see, you've done your turn, we have to give another zone. And in all of this, the issue of meriting the job or the office or being capable of doing the job never even ever comes up.
It never does.
Because we're all mostly interested in
where do they come from?
Where they're from. This is the problem. But I want to. We have Mr. Donald Duke on the line. We want to talk to him about this because it's best to speak with the man in the middle of this imbroglio. Thank you very much, Mr. Donald Duke, for joining us. Tell us what you would call this ruling. Would you say it's a victory or not? I mean, looking at the legal tussle, the back and forth, and the timing of this rule coming, do you think it's a victory?
Well, it's a Pyrrhic victory for the intent election itself. But it's a constitutional victory because the issue here was zoning. Pyrrhic in the sense that the victory does not enable me, it states unequivocally that I'm the candidate, was the candidate of the Social Democratic Party, but it did not enable me contest, campaign, seek funding, because I couldn't be campaigning when I had a case in court, because that would be contempt of the process. And that's why I said it's Pyrrhic. But the real victory here is that it puts closure to this issue of zoning, where parties decide that for one reason or the other, the president or the governor must come from one section of the country or not. No. But the president of the country or the governor must see his state or the nation as one constituency. So this zoning or musical chairs, as I like to call it, it can be done for conventional purposes, but it's not constitutional, and that's where the real victory is.
I'm just curious, we've had reactions, and you must have heard as well from Professor Jerrigan expressing his displeasure with the judgment. Now, to be specific, how would you respond to his statement from his team, which reads in part, as disappointed as we may all feel, it is important to remind ourselves of the saying that the Supreme Court is not supreme because it is infallible, but only because it is the final court of the land.
Clearly, they're sore losers. I don't want to banter with these guys, but it's a shame. It's a shame for act by Professor Jerry Ghana and his team. I mean, Jerry Ghana came into national limelight touting Bansa, unity, one nation. And when it suits him, he now remembers that he's a Christian or remembers that he's a northerner, and therefore he does not query or question the primaries in which I emerged. He admits that the primaries were well carried out. What he questions is that I, being a southerner, or coming from the southern part of the country, because I'm not a southerner, I'm coming from the southern part of the country, ought not to have taken part in the elections. He's trying to use that that's what the party's constitution says. The party's constitution doesn't say so. The party constitution says that where the president comes from one part of the country, the national chairman will come from another part of the country. Well, I'm not president, and I wasn't president then. I was just a presidential candidate. And besides, even if the party's constitution said that, it cannot stand in the face. It's contrary to what the national constitution says, and that takes precedence. The office of president is not a party office; it's a constitutional office. So the party cannot regulate the office that it has that is not its. Okay, you cannot give what you don't have. You cannot regulate what is not yours. I cannot go to your home and say this is how you should run your home, because it's not my home. I can do what I want to do in my home. I can't do it in your home. And that's the same thing. The national constitution has set criteria for participating or going for offices. So it's not for him to now say, no, you can't understand because you're from the north or the south. I think it's a shameful thing. I see them as sore losers, and I hope they grow up and become Democrats once and for all.
I mean, Mr. Donald Duke, some would say you sound this way because, you know, the ruling is in your favor. But really, how would you respond to the judiciary's understanding of political things or timings? I mean, calendar and the pace of our judicial process. And this is a question I just asked somebody. How does this make or mar how the elections fare at the end of the day?
Ordinarily in law, there's a maxim that says justice delayed is justice denied. However, our judicial system needs to be revamped completely. Indeed, the fastest judgments are obtained in political matters, which is not really that fast, but that's the fastest you get. But you can imagine if you have other civil matters or even other criminal matters that languish in court for years and years and years. I mean, you know, you have cases land cases or criminal cases that go on for 10, 15 years. Listen, Governor Dario and Governor Yemi were recently convicted, but that case has been in court for over 10 years. You know, and there's several like that. Our judicial system is not only archaic, but it's contrary to justice. It does not deliver justice. It's not designed to deliver justice. We need to amend it. We need to revamp it to ensure that within 45 to 90 days, cases are thrashed out in the lower courts, and appeals should not last more than 45 days. And only by leave of the Supreme Court can a case get to the Supreme Court if it's not constitutional or it's not a death sentence. These are what we need to do. We can't fritter time, and the system right now, poor people have no access to justice. How much can a poor man retain a lawyer for 10 years, 15 years, 5 years? It doesn't work that way. So there's a lot of work to be done in this country. Right now, I don't think we understand what nationhood is all about.
The layman on the street will ask now, you know, basically, what's the next thing for you, Mr. Donald Duke? Lessons that can be learned from this ruling. I mean, playing the game of politics and siding with political parties, with ideologies.
Well, time will tell. Don't forget that we have political platforms and really not political parties, because they're not guided by any sense of ideology and all that. INEC is also looking at, you know, assessing various political parties to determine whether they'll deregister quite a number. I don't know what the fate of SDP would be, because if you fail to get a certain number of seats in the assembly and whatever criteria, so I don't know, but my options are open. I would like to serve this country in whatever capacity that I feel I can bring value to it. But even if I don't go into politics, I still think I can serve this country from the private sector. But it's important that at the end of time, I can look back and say that I contributed to the growth of Nigeria. That will make my incarnation worthy.
Thank you for speaking with us, Mr. Donald Duke, presidential candidate for the SDP. Back to you guys before we wrap this up. You all heard what he had to say. It's his position on the matter. He keeps saying, oh, it was a Pirate victory because, in the first instance, this shouldn't have gone to court. But going forward, how do political parties avoid this? Zamfara State, for example, APC, is suffering from the fact that there was no internal democracy, as you spoke of. Same thing for APC in Rivers State. They lost everything because there was no internal democracy. And one would wonder, because we cannot really tell which party is which, especially when it comes to the big parties, because they keep crisscrossing each other, what should they be learning to do better as we go forward? Because we can't be in 2023. I don't want to sit here talking about the same issue. What's the way forward? I'll start with you.
Well, I think the central fact is that we have an over-centralized state that everybody wants to have a cut of the cake. So there's a gangster competition, so to speak. Yes.
Interesting way to put it.
A gangster competition for the state is the industry in a neocolonial country like ours, where nothing actually works and there's no production going on apart from crude oil production, and then that is flown, drawn across the Atlantic for refining. We don't even have refineries in this is 2019 and all of that. So unless we're able to cut down on that expensive political structure that is...
Is it the power at the center?
Yeah, not only the power at the center, the Nigerian states, so to speak, the political machinery, the power, the apparatus of the state is overfunded. So everybody wants to have a cut of the cake. So there's always a big battle for power.
Who gets the biggest chunk?
Exactly.
Dami.
I mean, these things have always happened and they've happened for a long time. I think what's the difference is people being sanctioned and being punished. In case of APC, Zamfara being threatened to not have to field any candidates. Same with Rivers as well. And I think the impetus is on parties that it's time to clean house as well. And it's time to make sure that you get your members in order. And it's time that you do things by the book. And I think, ironically, as painful as this is, I think this is progress as well. Because ironically, a few years back, if something similar happened, and this did happen as well, you would have two people, someone would get in, and then, they would go to court. I mean, I remember Rotimi Amechi for his first term did not run as well. He wasn't on the platform as well, but he contested the primary process that brought in, the man that eventually won, and he was rewarded as governor rightly as well. So I think this is a growing pains, but I think parties would learn to get themselves in order. I mean, it's painful that Rivers APC ironically hasn't learned, but I think with a lot more of these things as well, parties will start to learn that, the impetus is on them to clean house and that no one else will do it and they'll be punished if they don't.
All right. Well, we will take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be wrapping up this segment. Stay with us.